Am I in a position to say yes to the things God is calling me to do? And if you're not, what is holding you back?
Welcome to the Steward Lab Podcast with our parents, James and Amberlee Rich. Join Mom and Dad as they explore how to be good stewards with your time, money, relationships, health, careers, and even your kids, like us. It's all about growing God's kingdom. Come on, let's experiment.
Welcome to the Steward Lab Podcast. I am your co-host, James Rich, with my lovely wife,
Amberlee Rich. We're so excited that you are here listening or watching today if you're watching on YouTube, but we are so excited to start the Steward Lab Podcast.
Yeah, so if you're a regular viewer of, well, I guess not viewer, at that time we didn't have YouTube, but if you're a regular listener to the Rich Living on Less podcast, you'll notice that there is an extra voice, an extra person in the chair. That is myself. I am the husband of the wonderful Amberlee Rich. We have been married for 15 years at this point, starting this podcast. We've got two incredible kids. What do you want to tell them about our kids?
Our kids are just amazing. It's just been such a delight being able to be a parent and learning from them and being refined, and I just love it.
Yeah. Today we are going to be talking about how a hot tub changed our life. A $200 hot tub at that, which we found on the Nextdoor app. And find from here, we like a good deal and we will use things until they have worn out, which unfortunately that specific one has worn out. We do have a new hot tub. It took us a while to get it, but
yes, it's replaced.
But the story about the hot tub, I think is so great for us to get started with, because the whole purpose of this podcast itself is to be a wise steward with the resources we have. And the only way we can do that is to actively be intentional with what God's given us.
Yeah. So when we had this $200 hot tub, we were at a place in our lives where we were scraping by. Like, we were not hitting any of the goals that we had. It was really just in survival mode. And we sat in that hot tub for a really long time until we were super pruny, and we just dreamed together. We asked God, what do you have for us? And it was just such an amazing conversation that God just put so many things on our heart and revealed so many things that we had deep inside of us that we just put down because we didn't have the resources, or we didn't feel like we were equipped to be able to lean into those things because they seemed so out of reach.
So one night, Amberlee says, hey, James, can we just go sit in the hot tub and can we just dream up our future? Just take some time and think of all the things that we want to do. So luckily I said yes. We went out, we got into the hot tub, and we just started dreaming up with nothing holding us back. And so we said, if money wasn't an issue, if time wasn't an issue, if our current job situation wasn't an issue, what would our life look like if we could be essentially the architects of our future, the architects of our present as well? And so we started to dream up some of the things. What are some of the things that you remember that we came up with?
We wanted to go on mission trips with our family. A lot of it was just doing things as a family and having more time freedom to be able to do that.
Yeah, and as we were starting to talk about that, we realized that some things in our life had to change in order to do that. And so we started dreaming up. I think one of the things was we wanted to be able to work together. We didn't know what capacity at that time we wanted it to be.
Yeah.
For those of you that do not know, we are financial coaches. We work together. At that time, we didn't even know financial coaching was a thing. And so we're just saying we want to be able to work together. We want to be able to say yes to the things. That was the big thing. We want to be able to say yes to the things that God puts on our heart without anything holding us back.
Yeah. And one of the big things that really stood out to us when we started to just dream things up and then reverse engineer it was that we didn't want to have a house payment. We just really felt like God was calling us to pay off our home. And if you look at the math and the numbers, it normally is not always the best decision. But we really felt like that was something that God was calling us to do to free us up to take the next steps. So it was like, go and do this, and then you'll be able to say yes to all the other things that I have for you.
Yeah. And so when you talk about that not being the best decision, you can look at any decision and just look at the math, or you can look at the math and then also what kind of emotional toll it takes on you, all of the different parts of your life. And so as we looked at it, if we were just mathing, just looking at the math, it didn't make sense because we could have gotten a better return on our money in the market than what
Yeah.
our interest rate. That was back when we had the 3.625%
Yeah.
interest rate, which is unheard of at this point. I mean, the market, we could have gotten at least 8 to 10%, but more likely to be much higher than that. And so from a math perspective, it would have made more sense to take what we were putting onto the house and put it into the market, just from a math perspective. But as we started realizing, it's not always about the math. So we figured if we were to take that money, put it towards the house, get rid of it as fast as possible, that frees us up. It reduces the amount of money going out on a monthly basis from our funds. And so it frees us up to do other things.
So we just went on this journey that we actually had people join us, and we call it the Debt Dump Challenge. And we had over 60 families join. Over the course of a year, we paid off our house. Many other people became debt free, and collectively we paid off more than $500,000 in that year. And it was such an amazing time having community joining together and working actively towards a common goal. And it was also one of the first times that we worked together, really helping other people in their finances while getting so much support and community for ourselves, that we realized, what if we could actually do this full time? Could this be something that we could have as a business someday?
That was the first aha moment of, okay, we said in the hot tub we want to be able to work together, but now this is what that could look like, because we actually saw something working and it was incredible. We had so much fun. We built a community that was supportive of each other, and that allowed us all to work together and really make huge progress that you don't see if you're doing something all by yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely. And with that, like, we paid off our home. I was able to stay home for a while and homeschool our kids, and we still are homeschooling our kids right now. And so it's given us the freedom to be able to educate our kids in the way that we feel like it is best for them at this point in their lives. And we've been able to spend the quality time with them and pour into them throughout it while still working together and helping people. And so it's just been a really amazing opportunity to really get to experience both sides of the coin, that, like, I'm still able to work, but I also am able to homeschool our kids and be present in our lives.
Yeah. Really, we were, as I said earlier, architecting, if that's even a word. We were architecting our life, and we had gotten it to a place where if our goal is to be able to say yes to anything that God has us to do, then we have to be freed up with being able to say yes or no based on our work schedule. And so by being able to work together, that allowed us to say yes. Then by having the kids being homeschooled, that allowed us to say yes, because we didn't have to only do the things that God wanted us to do during the summer. We could actually adjust and go. When people are in school, we could still do the schooling thing and go if it was something that God wanted us to do. And it was just this last summer that we had our first real big yes, that we got to say yes to, from God asking us to do something. And it was so incredible. It was so much fun. Those of you that don't know, we live in Idaho, and we were able to go to Missouri and spend 2 months on a ranch serving a family. We got to experience things that we would have never been able to experience had we not had that hot tub session where we sat down and we dreamed up what we wanted our future to look like.
Yeah. God's fingerprints were all over that time. And God moved so much in our family. We were able to help others in the process. And we were able to do it during the school year when other people just are not able to say yes to it. And so it really is amazing to be able to say yes to those big things without feeling like there's anything holding us back. And that's what we have, this passion inside of us. We just have this vision. If Christians could go and do the things God's calling them to do without having all these things holding them back, what would the world look like? It would be amazing to see how much more effective and how much further we could spread the word of God to others if we didn't have money holding us back, if we had time, we weren't stressed out all the time, when we're not living in survival mode. We have good health. There's so many things that are holding us back from doing the things God's wanting us to do. And we're not perfect in this at all. We're still working on this. It's a journey. It's a path that you're going towards, but it takes intentionality, and most people are not doing that.
And that's why we're doing this podcast. It's not to show all of our listeners how we have it all figured out, because, believe me, we do not have it figured out. But we thought that The purpose of this is for us to experiment with the different ways of becoming a better steward of the things that God has for us. And so we are going to be bringing people onto this podcast that know things in certain aspects of life more than we do. Maybe they've come up with a system or a solution to help them be more intentional with a certain aspect of life. One thing with us being financial coaches, we probably will have a bent towards finances when it comes to stewarding your resources, because that is what we do on a regular basis. And really out of that whole time in the hot tub and what Amberlee just talked about, us being able to do this and help Christians especially be more intentional with their finances frees them up to do more of God's work. And we really do see that even though that this is not technically a church-born ministry, this is our ministry. I truly believe that ministry is not a vocation, it is a lifestyle. And our lifestyle has allowed us, we have crafted our lifestyle to be able to help people free up money so that they can do the things that God has for them. And so that's where now we are financial coaches.
Yeah. And I just love, as a financial coach, we're able to help people with their finances, which it's not like we just love money, but we love that when we help someone with their finances, we're able to help them with their entire lives, because money touches everything. And so when we are helping someone get a hold on their finances, be able to pay off debt, be able to say yes to the things God's calling them to do, it changes their relationship with their spouse. It changes their relationship with their kids. It changes their family tree. Like, there's so many things that it affects the job that they have, the ability to retire when they want to. Like, it's just, it matters.
Yeah, it really does touch every aspect of our life. I mean, even sleep. I can't tell you how many of our clients have said that after putting together the resources that we've given them and they put them into practice, that they sleep better. They have a better relationship with their spouse because they're not fighting constantly, and they're finding new tools and resources to be able to express what their thoughts are on their finances without bashing the other person. And so really it really does touch every aspect of his life. And that's why we've loved being financial coaches. And you'll see that come out in this podcast.
Yeah. And I think one thing to just note, I know financial coaches, like the actual terminology, is something that's pretty new. A lot of people will first think that we're a financial advisor.
We do not advise people on their investments. That's not what we do.
Yes. And we're not selling a product or anything like that. Like, we're not pushing insurance. We really are helping people to get intentional with their personal finances, so that way they are able to invest. They are able to do all the things that they really feel like God's calling them to do.
That's right.
Our heart, like we said earlier, is to really help people to be able to say yes to the things God's calling them to do without having things holding them back. But the reality is that most people, and Christians are included in this, we're normally just too busy. We're exhausted. We're financially stressed, and we get to see that on a daily basis, that it's real when you see the numbers. And so many people think that they're the only ones struggling. Let me just say that you are not, if that's where you're at. There are so many other people that are struggling with their finances because prices are going up.
In other words, you're not alone.
Yeah, you're not alone. And most of the time, we're living a reactive life. We're just taking whatever comes to us and living reactively. When I look at how Jesus lived and I read the Bible, Jesus is not being reactive. He is so proactive in every scenario. And if we want to be like Jesus, we can't just respond and react to life. We need to go after the things God's calling us to do and be proactive.
We're really called to be stewards of the resources that God gives us. I even think lately, over the last few years, I did not steward my health that well. And I'm on a journey right now that is one of my experiments. If we stick to the Steward Lab, I'm experimenting with ways to be healthier, ways to eat better, to exercise more. And so I really want everybody to understand that it's not just, when we talk about stewardship, there's usually two different things that people think about. One is either their finances. It's stewarding your finances. It always, a steward means finance. It doesn't. It means more than that. Or they think that they're asking for a ginger ale on an airplane, and they're going to ask the steward. The reality is, stewardship is every resource God's given you. That can include your kids, parenting, your spouse, stewarding that relationship, stewarding your finances definitely is one. But what are some of the other things that people can be stewarding?
You can even be stewarding like the planet. Like I think we're launching on Earth Day, which I think is just it seems like it's meant to be, but we need to be taking care of God's creation. There's so many things that we need to steward, our careers, our job. The amount of time that we spend working is I don't know the statistic off the top of my head, but it's a large percentage of our time. And how can we steward our career and our job to actually be reflecting Jesus to the people around us?
Even stewarding the space that we have. What are you doing with the space? Our home, we love to entertain people. We love to bring people in and pour out the love of God on them just simply by feeding them or sharing a fire pit with them, whatever it is.
Yeah.
What space have you been provided by God? We believe that everything that we have is given to us by God. So we are just managing the things that God's given us. He has entrusted us with these things. And what a blessing for us to take the things that he's given us and be able to manage it in a way. I just think about our daughter just recently had a birthday, and for their birthdays, we give them a privilege and a responsibility every single time. Well, for her privilege, we gave her the stewardship responsibility to be able to manage the funds that we get for her schooling. So she gets to direct how that is going to be done. And the fact is, if she stewards that well, we will open up and give her more of that responsibility. And so it's so much fun as a father for me to look down and just see my daughter make good decisions with the resources that I have given her personally. It makes me want to give her more responsibility. And I think God is the same way. As we start developing systems and standards for the way that we interact with the things that God's given us, and we do that in a way that's pleasing to him, I think it makes God smile. My goal in life is to make God smile.
Yeah. And biblically, if you're faithful in little, you'll be faithful in much. And so I think a lot of times people are waiting to win the lottery or have some type of inheritance or something, some magical thing that happens, and then they're going to start managing what they have well. But the reality is that we all have something. And even if you look at third world countries, in comparison to where we're at, even if you are below the poverty line right now, you are richer than a lot of the people in the world. And recognizing all the things that you have, because it is a gift and it's so easy to dismiss it and not to recognize how God is being faithful in our lives.
Let's talk just a little bit. This episode is going to be somewhat different than most of our episodes. This is very much an introduction. What is the purpose of Steward Lab Podcast? I guess let's talk about steward. We've talked about that a little bit, and we'll talk more about that in the next episode. What does steward mean? But lab, Steward Lab. So why did we choose that?
We really love the idea of stewarding to begin with, of like being intentional with what God has given us. But we love the lab section of it. And maybe it's because my dad was an organic chemistry professor and I got a little science in me slightly. But I love the idea of actually practicing, like experimenting with what God has given us. Like it's so easy to read the Bible and not actually put it into practice. And that's the same thing with stewardship. Like it's not something for us just to know in our head. Head knowledge does not get you where you need to be.
That's right.
And like the book of James is so much like you have to take action. You have to practice your faith. And we need to be putting stewardship into practice. There's so many different parables where God is clearly saying you need to be growing the resources that he gives us.
You can think about sitting in a classroom and getting information. So we didn't call this Steward University and we didn't call this Steward Classroom because that's where knowledge is given. But a lab is where you apply the knowledge. And that's what we want to do. At the end of every podcast, we're going to give you something to apply. The thing is a lot of times people will say knowledge is power. False. It is the application of knowledge that is power. And so we're going to give you the tools and the knowledge to be able to apply. But the important thing is if you just listen to this podcast and you never put into practice anything that we say here, you might as well not listen because that is the purpose of this time is for us all to experiment with the resources we have so that we can do the things that God has for us, and we can practice, we can try things out. And I will tell you right now, not everything is going to work. That's why we experiment. In a lab, does everything always work?
Yeah, even just today, like I tried making beef jerky because James can't eat most beef jerkies, well, any of the beef jerkies that are sold in the store. And our kids tried them and they both spit it out because they said it was so horrible. And the reality is, James was like, that's an experiment. We're trying something out. I followed a recipe and we'll experiment and see how we can actually make it work next time. I think it's easy for us to just be disheartened when something like that, like it took a lot of time. It cost some money. There was a lot of things that it took up. But the reality is I learned from it and I'm going to grow from that experience. And I think it's easy for us to just watch someone else's life on social media and not actually take action and do something on our own. And if we are just watching cooking shows but never actually making any of the food, what good is that? And that's the same thing with stewardship. It's good to watch those things, but it's even better to put it into practice. And so that's what we really want to encourage others to go and do that, and also encourage ourselves to put this into practice because it's something that we're continually growing in.
That's right. Yeah. And really the whole purpose for this, and we've said this before, is that we want to equip God's people. We want to equip them to do what He is calling them to do. And so if you have a calling, we all have a calling on our life, and it requires certain things that you're good at, then let's experiment and get better at those things. If you're a missionary on a mission field and you raise funds, I understand. I've been there. I've done that. I've raised funds to be on the mission field, and it is hard. Become really good at raising funds so that you don't have to stress about the finances. In every aspect of your life, you're going to have things that you have to become better at. Experiment, try it. Understand that things aren't always going to work. Don't let that make you give up. The promise that we'll give you on this podcast is we will not approach these aspects through a guilt and shame filter. Those are the most terrible motivators. We, even in our finances, as we're helping our clients, we don't do a restrictive type of thing. We do a permissive thing. What can we give ourselves permission to do? Where can we find areas in our life that are out of focus when we compare it to our goals and our values and the things that are important to us? What is out of focus? And we reduce that waste. That's the same with your calendar. That's the same with your parenting techniques. Like, what doesn't align with what God has put inside of you? And that is what Steward Lab is all about. We're going to be we're going to be looking at all of the different areas of our life. We're going to bring people in that are experts, and we're going to find out how can we, in every aspect of our life, improve so that we are stewarding those things the way that God would have us steward them.
Stewardship can feel like a weight. It can feel heavy, especially if you feel like you have not been stewarding the resources that God's given you well. And let me just say that God gives us grace, and give yourself grace through the process, that it is impossible to be stewarding every single resource that you have perfectly.
Yeah.
We are not God. We cannot do that. But we can work towards being intentional and using the resources that we have to glorify God and to further His kingdom.
Yeah.
And that's what we're aiming for. So this is definitely going to be a loving approach. We're not here to make you feel bad about where you're at.
Right.
The goal is to move you to the next step, getting closer to what God is calling you to do. Overall, we're going to be going through some biblical principles, walking you through how to live this out in today's world, because the world has changed. Even from when we were kids, things have been shifting, and it's important to take what we read in the Bible and apply it to today's world. And so that's what we're really going to be focusing on, is how do we live these principles out in 2025 and the years to come. And so I think it's important for us to recognize that some things are going to need to be adjusted, but the principle will still work.
So the big thing is you have to take action. You have to experiment. And we're going to have some fun experiments throughout this process. And if it doesn't work, change the variables. Don't give up. Don't just say, I'm just giving up on finances completely. I'm just going to let it happen because it never works. No, change the little variables. Same with parenting. Like what we say to our kids does not always sink in. So we change the variables, we change our tone, we change the way that we talk to them, we change our approach until we find something that is working, and we continue doing that so that our kids become incredible adults that we want to hang out with, right?
You are the architect of your life. God's fingerprints are all over our lives. We can't undo the past that we have experienced. And I think a lot of times we can beat ourselves up for how we've stewarded maybe our body, our finances. We can beat ourselves up till we're black and blue, but that's not going to do us any good. God has forgiven us as far as the east is from the west. We need to let go of those things, but moving forward, this is when we can actually change and bring things to a better point. I just think about writing a story. Like if you're in the middle of a story, there's a beginning that maybe this character has had lots of struggle, but there's normally some triumph at the end, and that story is still being written. And so giving yourself grace and recognizing that even if your past is not something you're proud of, that doesn't mean your future is not going to be something you're proud of.
Yeah. And just because we say that we're not going to use guilt and shame to help you and motivate you, that's not to say that that's not what is happening inside of your mind right now. And so if you find that you're beating yourself up because you haven't stewarded the things in your life well, then acknowledge that, set it aside, ask God to help remove that from you, but also take those and thank your past, the things that you've done, for being able to look at that and say, that's not how I want to do it. That was part of an experiment. Maybe the experiment went a little bit longer than you wanted it to, but we can learn from every experiment. The experiments that go wrong, we get to learn more from than the ones that go right. You've accomplished all of this incredible information of what not to do. Now let's make the shifts, change those little variables, and let's start living a life that stewards our resources well.
Yeah. Yeah. So here is your lab experiment for this week. So I want you to ask yourself this question, and it can be challenging to do this honestly. So try to do this as honestly as possible. And so here's a question. Am I in a position to say yes to the things God is calling me to do? That's a really challenging question. Am I in a position to say yes to the things God is calling me to do? And if you're not, what is holding you back from saying yes? Is it your health? Is it your finances? The more detailed, the better, because that is going to give you an idea of what are the things that need to be changing.
Just like in the experiment we did in our hot tub where we had that conversation and we went back and forth, dreaming up our future. And the whole idea was to get to the place where we could say yes when God wanted us to do something. And so we found those things that were preventing us from doing that. And then the next step was that we began to reverse engineer. What can we do in our life? What one big change can we do in our life that will have a trickle effect that will allow us to change those variables that are preventing us from being able to say yes? And then we started a plan on that. And the big one for us was we needed to get rid of our debt so that we could be freed up to be able to take the chance of starting our own business, of doing all of these things that would allow us to be freed up to say yes. Now, your yes will be completely different than ours. We're not doing this podcast to say you have to pay off your house. We're not doing this podcast to say you have to work for yourself, that you have to homeschool. No, some of you don't need to pay off your house right now. You can do that along the way until get it paid off by retirement, and you'll be fine. But we are all equipped with different things inside of us, and we should use those things because they're put there by God as the driving force for what we're going to do in the future. And then we just look and say, what hurdles are in the way? And let's figure out a way to get rid of those. Say the questions again for us.
Yeah. So the question is, am I in a position to say yes to the things that God is calling me to do? And if you are not, what is holding you back from saying yes?
And then those are the very things that you start to reverse engineer.
Yeah. So we just want to end with a prayer. This is a prayer that I wrote a while ago, and it's something that I pray out loud in the morning. I kneel next to our bed, and it has been life-changing for me to kneel down and pray this, because it has changed me. And it's something that I need to remember every single day about stewardship. And so if you would like a digital copy of this, it will be in the show notes, so you can get that as well. But here it is. And I'm just going to pray us out. Lord, you are my provider, my daily bread. Help me to recognize your good gifts from above. Empower me to make choices that line up with your heart. Help me to be content with what you've given me. Guide my steps and decisions, for they impact more than just me. Give me wisdom and discipline to use your resources well, to build your kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Forgive my shortcomings, my unbelief, and my selfishness. Let me steward all that you give me well for the benefit of others and future generations. Thank you for your continued faithfulness, for you are my provider, and I trust in you. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
We will see you next week.